My name is Ronald E. I was born in Columbus, Ohio. When the Korean War broke out, I was working in the coal mines in southern Ohio, and my kid brother at that time, he was in the Army. I'd got out, and he got in the Army, and he arrived in Korea in July of 1950, and was wounded in August, and with the 24th Division, and he went to the hospital in Japan, and when he came back, they put him in the 1st Cavalry Division, and he was killed in action at a place called near Ronald
So he went back again to Korea?
Well, he would just come out of the hospital, and they needed people, so they put him back in combat with the 1st Cavalry.
Right from the hospital?
Yeah, from the hospital. And he was killed in action in February '51.
February 51.
Just south of Ronald. That big battle they had there, and because of him getting killed, I re-enlisted in the Army because I got out for a short time in June of 1951.
June of 1951.
And they stopped me in Japan and put me in the 187th Airborne Rakkasan, and I got out of there very quickly, and so toward the end of July 1951, I was up in North Korea with the 2nd Infantry Division. I caught a boat from Japan over, and then caught the train up to the Wachon Reservoir, and from there they sent me up to the 2nd Infantry Division, and I became a forward observer, if you know what that is.
I don't know.
I called fire in on the enemy, mortar fire, heavy mortars, the big mortars, and as a forward observer, and my first battles was up near the Punch Bowl, just north of the Punch Bowl, and then from there I went into what they called the Bloody Ridge, and for about 6 weeks, had a very bloody battle, and then my unit went in and took an outfit, or a place called the Heartbreak Ridge, and the first 3 months I was there, my unit, 2nd Infantry Division, lost over 6,000 men.
So that's the period of trench war, right?
Well, we were moving north.
Moving north, but you didn't really move forward.
We were straightening out the line, really.
Right.
Yeah, straightening out the line, moving forward to take the high ground and get control of the area. And so I was involved in the battle of what they call the Heartbreak Ridge in the Central Front, and involved in a great deal of action right there.
All right. So before we get into the details of those battles, I want to ask you this question. Were you aware of Korea when you left for Korea in 1951?
Oh, yes.
Do you know where Korea was and
yes.
what's going on? So you are the sort of very exceptional, because most of the Korean War veterans that I have interviewed, they didn't know where Korea was.
Oh, I knew exactly where it was at. In fact, the Army had an occupation over there in the middle, right after the Second World War. A lot of people don't realize that.
Right.
But we had an occupation army there.
From 1945 to 1949, July, all Americans withdraw from Korean Peninsula. Yep. So you were aware of what's going on there, and how did you feel about it? What was your sort of motivation, if there was any, or,
To go there?
Yeah.
I went there because my brother was killed in action.
Right.
And kind of a revenge type thing. I was going to kill a lot of people. And I ended up doing just that.
So could you give me details of what sort of battle and combat you were engaged, and how you were wounded out of that?
I was wounded in the foot in early August of 1951, and then in early October of '51 I was hit in the upper leg, shrapnel from hand grenades, and then in January of 1952 I got hit 2 more times up in the Kuma Valley, the Iron Triangle. in the Bloody and Heartbreak Ridge, I was involved in a great deal of close-in fighting. In fact, I've kind of set the record for hand-to-hand combat from the American Army. I've actually killed 12 people in hand-to-hand combat.
So almost like in 2 months you got wounds and after wounds, right?
Yeah.
And you were fully recovered from it?
No, I took care of myself.
You took care of yourself?
Yeah.
Are you medic?
No, but I know a lot about that stuff. Back where I got hit through here, I dug it out myself with a knife.
Wow.
Yeah.
So could you give me some detail how you got wounded in 1951 in August in your foot?
A piece of shrapnel from hand grenade hit me in the front of my ankle, and I put a cut on the front of my ankle, but kind of cut up my boot pretty good. It wasn't a serious thing. Didn't bother me very much. I only kept getting infected when I'd move my foot. You know, it'd crack open all the time. And then in
October,
I
leg, yes.
I got hit up on the heartbreak and the start of the heartbreak through the leg, and I dug it out myself. Put a little sulfa on it and a little bandage, and went on back to business.
What was the battle? Where?
The Heartbreak Ridge.
Heartbreak Ridge.
It's what they called the Heartbreak Ridge. It was a major battle, the Korean War in the Central Front.
And it was between Chinese and American, right?
No. It was between the Americans and the North Koreans.
North Koreans.
The Bloody Ridge and the Heartbreak Ridge were both North Koreans.
Only North Koreans, not Chinese.
North Koreans. At the very end of the Battle of the Heartbreak Ridge, the Chinese started moving in brigades, and on the last day of the battle, me and another guy took out about 1,000 Chinese with mortar and artillery, and drove them back. And we were able to take our objective there and start a defensive line.
And the January 1952.
January 1952.
At Kumha Battle, right?
Yeah, and up in the Kumha Valley, I was in several things up there. The day before Christmas, I went out with 73 men on a deep penetration, going into near Pyongyang, which was the high point of the Iron Triangle. We shot our way almost into Pyongyang, and we were run out there. And of the 73 of us went out, 6 of us finally got back alive, and I was the only one that wasn't wounded. And we ended up swimming down a river in the middle of the Kumha Valley with the Chinese running down both banks throwing hand grenades at us and shooting at us with submachine guns. And I made it out. There was about 20 of us got into the river out of the 73, and 6 of us got out alive.
Wow.
Yeah. And then 18 days later, I went out with a reinforced rifle company, and our objective was to take a battalion outpost, Chinese battalion outpost, and the battle was pretty fierce, the best way to put it. We fought our way up this mountain, and when we got within about 35, 40 yards of the top of the mountain, out of the 170 of us that started out, there was 35 of us left, and some of them were already wounded. And all of our officers were gone, our sergeants was gone, and in kind of reality, I became the company commander, and I was a corporal.
Corporal commander.
Yeah, and I led the last 35 men on a straight charge into the Chinese lines. They had in excess of 1,000 people there, and I took 35 men straight in against them. And they knocked all the other guys down, and I ended up about that far from the Chinese. And I looked back and I was by myself, because I was leading them in forward and I wasn't looking back. And when I stayed there by myself, I thought, well, I went to a lot of trouble to get here, no use wasting the whole day. And so I let out a war whoop and jumped in the trench with them. And I ended up killing a lot of people.
Were you thinking of your brother?
Well, early on I was thinking about kind of revenge, but I spent a lot of time around, the fragmented families of the Korean people. And I kind of forgot about that. I was fighting for, my unit and the Korean people. is really what it was involved in. And my job was to protect the Americans and take out the Chinese and the North Koreans. And that's what I did.
How was the relationship with your brother before he left for Korea?
Oh, we were great. See, my mother had 17 children.
What?
Yeah.
17?
Yeah, 17 children.
Out of one marriage?
Yes. Uh-huh.
And
two of my brothers were killed in action, one in Korea and one in Vietnam.
Vietnam.
And I was wounded 4 times in Korea, and not seriously, but 4 times. And
so where you were in that hierarchy
I'm the
of
oldest
17?
son.
Huh?
I'm the oldest son. I had one sister older than me, and all the rest of them, 15, were younger than me.
So your brother was younger then?
Yes. Uh-huh. And also had another brother killed in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
I was in amongst them is the best way to say it, and I took out a whole trench full of Chinese by myself. I was shooting them and beating them to death with a rifle, and took out a machine gun with a white phosphorus hand grenade, went around the corner of the trench and charged about 35 more Chinese, engaged them in almost hand-to-hand combat. And because the first trench, I was fighting them in hand-to-hand combat, beating them to death with my rifle, and I killed as many as I could until I ran out of ammunition. So I went back down the mountain and picked up some young kid that was laying there wounded by the trench. He made it up almost to me, and I picked him up and threw him on my shoulder and started walking down the mountain with the Chinese running down behind me trying to bayonet me and shoot me, but I couldn't do nothing about it. I had no ammunition, so I just ignored him and kept walking. I got down, put a bandage on this kid, and then crawled around and got me some more ammunition, a lot of it. And I went back by myself again, and this time I took on about 200 Chinese in close hand-to-hand combat. They were actually jumping on my back and grabbing me with the leg, trying to tackle me down. And I was beating them off of me with a rifle and everything. And
I feel like I'm watching a movie now. I'm not listening from you.
Yeah, I actually killed a lot of people that day. Plus I took out about 200 more with mortar fire and tank fire that day. So I killed a lot of people that day, and the men that survived from this company that I was attached to that day, they all recommend me for the Medal of Honor.
Were you scared?
You know, too late to be scared. They was jumping on my back. No use being scared, too late for that stuff. I was used to close-in fighting, and I wasn't worried about it. I mean, I wasn't all that happy to be there, but I wasn't worried about it. I never see anybody I couldn't take.
We're going to continue on some of the other stories, but when did you left Korea for the United States?
My unit was pulled off the line and sent to Kojido to guard the prisoners down there.
Yes.
And I rotated from home from Kojido and back to Busan and then back to the States. And
when was that?
In the 1st of June of 1952.
Okay.
And when I got back in the States, they notified me I had been awarded the Medal of Honor.
What was the exact description awarding you the Medal of Honor?
That I killed a lot of Chinese. They actually gave me credit for at least 13 because the Americans never got higher than the first trench. Mm-hmm. And I swept over about 50 yards of the top of this mountain by myself.
By yourself?
Yeah, by myself. I probably killed at least 50 myself that day, and plus a couple hundred or more that I took out with mortar fire and tank fire. I have no way of knowing, you know, for sure, because you don't count people, you know. But there were a lot of Chinese there, and I handled them all by myself.
Could you explain the Medal of Honor to the audience who will have access to your interview and possibly with some of the photos? And there will be mostly young generations in the website. So could you please explain?
The Medal of Honor is the highest award American can give.
Is it from Department Department of Defense or from
No, it's awarded to you by Congress.
Congress?
By Congress and presented by the President of the United States, and which happened the 27th of June, 1952. I was at the White House and awarded the Medal of Honor by President Harry
So
Truman.
as soon as you returned from Korea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
do you know some statistics that how many Korean War veterans got this Medal of Honor?
there was originally 137, and only a handful of us lived. In my division, 19 men got the Medal of Honor, and only 4 of us lived, but one of them died right after he got home from his wounds. So 3 of us out of 19 really survived, and 2 of them got the medal together, and they lived, I don't know, about 12, 14 years, and then they both died for some reason, almost about 3 months apart. And I'm the last living one from the 2nd Infantry Division, which was the highest casualty unit of the Korean War.
But
My job was to protect a battalion front of American soldiers, and my job was not only protect them but to kill the enemy. And I actually served with the Korean Army there as a fort observer also, and they involved in combat with the Korean Army, and in fact I served in combat with every rifle company in the 38th Infantry Regiment of the 2nd Division, plus the South Korean Army, plus the Turkish Brigade, plus the Dutch Battalion, plus the French Battalion. I served in combat with all these people. I was a soldier, did my duty as I saw it. I didn't do anything that anybody else didn't do. I just got myself in a bad situation one day, and in fact several days, and had to shoot my way out of it. I ended up killing a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people.
have you thought about that fact that you killed so many people after you coming back?
No, it didn't bother me none.
No.
I think it bothered them some. Yeah, but I was a fort observer, and that was my job. And I killed so many because I survived everything. You know, a lot of the Americans would be killed. Almost all of them would be gone around me, and I'd be sometimes left there almost alone. And I kept fighting. I never stopped. That's just the way it was. You know, I grew up with this big family, and anybody bothered one of my brothers, I took care of them. If they hit bothered one of my sisters, they better leave town. But I'd hurt them bad. And I grew up that way. And I worked in the coal mines, and I grew tough, and wasn't afraid of very much, not even the enemy. Combat is the most desperate thing you can get involved in. In a lot of cases, like a nightmare. I think probably the most difficult thing was right after I got there and trying to acclimate myself to what was going on. You're not trained for this kind of fighting. You have to train yourself. So I taught myself to shoot like pointing your finger, and most of the time I didn't have to worry about it because the enemy was from here to you from me. And actually probably the hardest thing I had to put up with was to lay my rifle down and leave it there. Because I was a fort observer and I'm supposed to call fire in on the enemy, and you pick up your rifle, you become a rifleman. You can shoot 3 or 4 people, but as a fort observer you can kill 100 or 1,000. And so the hardest thing I had to learn was to leave my weapon alone, and do my job as a fort observer. It's hard to do, with the enemy on top of you. And so I grab my rifle and go to fighting all the time. I was just one of those guys that acclimated himself to war. I was hard, and physically hard, from working in the coal mines, and my brother was killed, and I was hard up here, and I'm an old paratrooper, Rakasan, and I'm well trained for this kind of stuff. See, as a paratrooper, the fight don't start until you're surrounded. And I'm one of the old paratroopers. In fact, I'm the only one one of the few men alive that's, you know, with the World War II gliders. Did a lot of things in my life.
On the other hand, what was the most rewarding moment during your service?
Probably when a handful of young men thought I was worthy of receiving the Medal of Honor. The Medal of Honor in itself is a great honor. The fact it's awarded by Congress and presented by the President, those are honors. But to me, the real honor of this thing is that a handful of young men who were with you at a difficult time thought you were worthy of it. And I'm sure you people, your soldiers felt the same way about your medals. But I've had the President of Korea personally tell me that because of people like me, and a handful of people like me, 50 million people walked the face of this earth as free people. And here just a couple of years ago, the Korean ambassador to America down at the Pentagon said the same thing about me. You know,
who was the president?
Park Chung-hee.
Park Chung-hee.
Yeah, I had the Korean ambassador a couple of years ago here at the Pentagon said that in 1950 Korea was a poor, backward nation, and today they're the 15th largest economy in the world. And he said, I attribute that by hard work for the Korean people and people like Sergeant Rosser who fought to the death. Well, the first time was 1975.
75.
Yeah, and then about every 2 or 3 years after that. Well, it's not like the Korea that I fought in. You know, there was no little dirt road, you know, and there were super highways. And like the road from Camp Casey down to Seoul, you know, at one time when I went there, it was just a little narrow road. Now it's a major highway.
Yes.
You don't see these straw huts anymore. Only some of them are like a museum area, and or some of the old people, the old farmers still kept theirs. Mostly they keep their, you know, animals in it. You know, the high rises on the Han River is unbelievable. Mm-hmm. You know, I've had the Korean people tell me about how they built these houses, and you buy one of these things, costs a lot of money, but you get some of it back, and all this kind of stuff. So they have good systems over there, and probably the only race of people in my whole life, and I've served all over the world, mm-hmm. That I had great affection for was the Korean people, other than the Americans. And sometimes I'm in doubt about the Americans. You know, we got some old nasty people in this country. You know, they're not safe to be around. But I've always had affection for the Korean people. In fact, this hatred I had for them, even for the North Koreans after my brother was killed, that kind of stuff just disappeared. You know, when I seen the fragmented families of these, you know, these Koreans, children, you know, without hope. And in fact, I think it was November of '51, I took what money I had saved when I was over there, mm-hmm. and donated to start a orphanage down in Uijeongbu.
Uijeongbu, yeah.
And my regiment supported that orphanage.
What was your rank at the time?
I was a corporal.
Corporal. So you received about $75 or so?
Well, actually, I probably got a little closer to $100 counting overseas pay and stuff like that, mm-hmm. but it wasn't significant. I couldn't spend it on nothing, mm-hmm. and so when I came home, I still had like 5 months' pay coming to me because I didn't even bother to get it out, because I couldn't spend it on nothing, and you know, just something else to carry around. I did a lot of things over there, you know. Mm-hmm.
Give me some examples. Give me some.
Well, I already explained to you this little boy I picked up.
Yes.
He wasn't really a little boy. He was probably 16 years old, and I didn't really realize that at the time.
Where was it?
I picked him up in the Kumar.
Yes.
Kumar area, and I took him down to my company rear, and you know, to try to get him in a safe place. And you know, try to get him fed, and I finally got him fed at gunpoint, you know. And I promised this sergeant, you know, that I was going back up on the line, you know, and when I came back, he better fatten this kid up a little bit or I was going to shoot him anyhow.
Oh.
Yeah, but I was a pretty mean fella back in them days. And and this kid, when he got, I think he was about 17 years old when he was taken into the Korean Army, but he was in a lot of sense wealthy by Korean standards because we gave him a lot of money, you know, for doing things and everything. I gave him a rifle with some ammunition, magazines and ammunition. And when, you know, he set up at night guarding my bunker. And he went to the Korean Army, and when in 1975, when I went to Korea, they told me that Park Chung-hee had, or not Park Chung-hee, Yi Tae-gu was his name, and I'm not sure how to correctly spell it and everything, but I remember that was his name.
The boy that you picked up, his name is Yi Tae-gu.
When he wasn't a little boy anymore, and he was an officer in the Korean Army, and he retired sometime later from the Korean Army as a full colonel in the Korean Army.
But did you meet him in person in 1975?
No, I through intermediaries, you know, I got in touch with him, you know, and you know, he was off someplace else, you know, and but I got in touch with him, and a Korean general there, you know, took care of, you know, getting in touch with him for me, and you know, I hadn't been over for quite a long time. I haven't tried to, you know, find him. I just haven't been there for several years. The last time I was in Korea was, or next to the last time, was 2001. When they hit the towers. I happened to be in Korea when they hit the towers. And from there I went to China, Beijing, China there, just because I couldn't come home.
When you go back to 2001, and if you can contrast or compare two different pictures of 1975 and 2001, did you see the big difference?
The big difference was you had a country. You absolutely had a country, and you had a stable government, and the people were safe, is the best way to put it. They had troubles, you know, from up north and everything, people, you know, coming back through there. But for the most part, the Koreans had a safe country, and all of them realized it. But I went back there to make a speech to the, you know, at Camp Casey, and they had a bunch of ambassadors there, and the first 4-star general of the Korean Army was there, and I remember him, and because I've been with him several times, and in fact, if you retire from the Korean Army as a general officer of that nature, this 4-star general will give you a poster. It's got him on it. It's got the dragons and you know, and all that stuff on it, you know. And it's got a picture of the general on there, and it's got a picture of General Van Fleet.
Van Fleet, yes.
And they got my picture down at the bottom. Yeah, and so the artist that drew this thing, he autographs it, I autograph it, and when the general presents it to the retiring general, he autographs it.
Unrecognized or unpopular and called Forgotten War. Why? Why do you think?
Korea got caught in between two wars, the Second World War and Vietnam, and it was by the kill ratio, not very many people got killed there. The overall 54,000,
right,
and killed in action or died as a result of something, and or died in the prisoner of war camps or starved to death or whatever it was. And but Korea just got caught between two other wars, and the boys came home. They went over, did what they could, and came home and went to work. And for the most part, Korea was a bitter fighting, not only for the American Army, but for the Korean Army. They had some very bad moments in the South Korean Army there, you know, because they were hit hard. and so was the Americans. But we learned to cope with it a little better than the Koreans did because we were better trained at that time. They trained us here in America, but didn't train us right, to tell you the truth, because nobody's trained for this kind of fighting up in the mountains and the close-in combat. But we were able to adjust a little better, and but today the Korean Army is absolutely outstanding. It has been for many years. Absolutely outstanding. They served with us in a lot of places around the world, and they're highly thought of. Very disciplined people. And I've respected them all my life. I came from this large family, and I always wondered how America would act if we got caught in the same situation as South Korea, and how my family, what would happen to this large family of mine if you didn't have a strong people there to get you out of it. And that's what Korea had. Korea, the reason you had people like Park Chung-hee who became very strong, because you needed a strong leader. You can't have a strong leader who wants to stay strong. Just like in America, we elect people and sometimes they're strong, but we also kick them out too.
Yep.
Yeah, and
that's the democracy.
Yeah, that's democracy. And Korea has a democracy, but it's not exactly like our democracy. And if we had a place like North Korea, where Canada is today, we would be acting a little different too. We would be looking for strong people. Most of the Korean War veterans that I've had to deal with have been back to Korea, and they were like me, absolutely amazed at the change of the country. You don't wind up a mountain anymore. You go through it, and everything's modern. Yeah, when we were there, it was like the Korean ambassador to America said. In 1950, it was a poor, backward nation with, everything was just like 19th century, actually probably 17th century, the old houses, mud houses, mud and straw houses with a straw roof and everything. But they were very good. I happen to know you stayed a lot warmer than them than you do in this hotel, for crying out loud. And the food, Korean people didn't have refrigeration like us, but they knew how to preserve food in the ground, like the winter and kimchi and all this kind of stuff. I got where I liked that pretty well. My daughter was in Korea, served in Korea. My granddaughter served in Korea, and so it's kind of a family thing with my personal family. That the place to go if you're going in the military is serve your first tour in Korea.
So how many children do you have?
I have one daughter, 2 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. The Army don't want somebody that has 17 children. So you can have 1 or 2 or 3 children, and the Army don't think anything unusual. But you start having a whole bunch of kids that they got to support, and they're not going to be too happy about it. So besides, you didn't make enough money to support that many children in the Army.
I know how military feel.
Yeah, I know, yeah. And we stick together. The American soldier sticks together, and we take care of each other, including our families.
Let me ask this question. You killed many Chinese and many North Koreans. Would you be willing to shake hands with those Chinese if they're alive?
Already have.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
How?
In 2001, I was in Seoul, Korea, and I went to Beijing, China. And when I got there, they knew who I was.
Really?
Oh yeah.
How did you inform them?
No, they knew. They met me at the plane when I got off the plane.
Oh.
And advised me not to talk about the politics or the war.
What brought you to the Beijing? Just for sightseeing?
I couldn't get home. I'm a school teacher, a history major. And and I used to teach ornamental or Oriental history, and China, Korea, and everything. You know, heck, I used to teach about Sun Yat-sen and all of the Chinese leaders and all that stuff. And
so you just go there to visit without being invited by any Chinese organization?
No, I just wanted. I had to go someplace, and so I decided not to stay in Korea. I had a chance to go visit China.
Oh.
Yeah, and the Chinese invited me to all kind of places, wine and dine me, so to speak. And I had the funny feeling. Here's people that I had killed by the dozens, actually by the we'll say by the hundreds. And all at once I'm out eating with these same age people. And
so they were the Korean War veteran in China?
No, these were the younger Chinese.
Oh, younger Chinese.
And the older Chinese, even some of their high-ranking officers, they'd look at me kind of funny, but they didn't say nothing to me. And I had an opportunity to talk to all these people. And you know, the war's over, and shake hands and be friends. And that's my attitude about the whole thing.
Would you do the same thing with North Koreans?
I believe I would. I have no hatred for them people. At one time I did, and this kind of hatred will eat you alive. You can't go around hating people. They have a different kind of philosophy, a different kind of government, and their people fight for what they believe. I fight for what I believe, and I hope I win, and they hope they win. The way it works.
You've been talking many aspects of your service, and I think that, you know, I can summarize, but if you are asked to summarize the impact of the Korean War upon your life, even especially after you came back from Korea, how would you describe it?
Because of what I was involved in and what I was decorated for, I do things that people dream about. I've been at the White House under every president of the United States since Franklin Roosevelt, 1945. I've been to the White House under all these people.
Did Obama invite you?
Oh yeah, I've been with Obama 3 times and decided this past March that I didn't want to go down to the White House again, and you know, I was tired of going there, you know, because I've been there many times. Under every president. I go places that's hard to get into. When I was in Russia, for crying out loud, the Russian people and the Russian high officials treated me like a visiting dignitary. We had admirals and colonels and everything else with me, and they didn't pay no attention to them. They only to me because of what I was doing. I had special programs I did to, you know, to make us get along better, and you know, realize, you know, we're one and the same people, and we are. We're one and the same people. We look a little different, but everybody looks a little different. Even in my family, we look a little different, and and I think people ought to get along. And that's what when I go to schools, I talk to schools all over the United States, sometimes all over the world, and because I go everywhere, and I talk to these people, and I tell them about honor and responsibility and the dignity of being a decent person. No matter who you are. I've said the same thing in Korea. I've been to Korea and talked to the Korean people many times, and I tell them, I said, to me, I'm almost like being at home when I'm here. I said, you people have been a great part of my life. A great part of my life, and I've always respected you people. Sometimes it's not been, you know, real easy, but you know, because sometimes everybody don't think alike, you know. And I mean, we could sit here and talk, and I'm sure we'd find things we'd differ on very quickly.
We have to accept the mutual differences, right? Yeah. And respect for it.
We respect each other and treat each other with honor. Is the way I think.
Since you've been teaching in the K-12 system about this Asian history, do you realize that in American history book there are not many pages on Korean War?
Oh, I know that. Well, there's not many pages on a lot of things anymore. They don't teach a lot about wars and stuff anymore in schools, unless you could take special courses in college. They're more interested in preparing you for the electronic age, this kind of stuff. Same thing in Korea, you know. Yeah, I know the same thing in Korea. I've been to some of the factories in Korea too, by the way, and been to your schools and all this kind of stuff. And I find it delightful, really, because we're more the same than different. The truth of the matter is.
So what do you think we have to do to pass on this legacy of Korean War veterans to our young generations?
I think it's happening right now. The Korean War veteran that's right here, they hold the Korean people in very high esteem. And you know why? Because the Korean people hold them in high esteem. And I think it's great. I really think it's great. A lot of these people, when they came back, you know, they had a difficult time adjusting and everything. War is a bitter place, and Korea was a bitter war, very bitter war. A lot of close fighting and everything. I've even had the President of the United States there tell me that, you know, Sergeant Rosser, it's my understanding that you've cut a lot of people in hand-to-hand combat. And I said, yes, sir, that's true, but none of it was my idea. You know, I had to do, you know, they were on top of me and I had to do something, you know. And every soldier does that. You kill to survive, you kill to take care of your people that's with you, and you don't have time to really think about what other people think. I think the communists have a very bad outlook on life. I really believe that. They have a very bad outlook on life, and they're going to have to change their philosophy quite a bit, you know, to really move into the rest of the world. But until they do, let them live their own life.
That's our cause, right?
I think eventually that North and South Korea will be one nation. Maybe not in my lifetime, maybe not in yours, but eventually it will be one people, because that's what you are, you're one people. I think what we're looking at is like a man and his wife that's not getting along very good. And
that's an excellent metaphor.
And neither one wants to give up their point of view. What's going to have to happen is this country would, North and South Korea would unite tomorrow if the North Korean people would be in charge. They would unite tomorrow. But we don't want it.
In a way.
Yeah, in a way it's going to happen.
Right.
And so these people have to realize that what they've done has only left themselves in really a bad position in the world. You know, even among their own people, they have some serious problems, both economic and whatever else. You know, a lack of freedom is a better way to put it. Because nobody up there in North Korea can say, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. They have to have permission to even think that. And it'll never be one country while the communists control the minds of the people. The people's got to be free to make up their own mind. And when that happens, when the people of North Korea gets free to make up their own mind, and just don't worry about the leaders, you know, because they're really irrelevant. You know, they come and go. You know, they die off. And personally, I think it's really most of the generals of the North Korean army that run that country. Anyhow, not this fellow that's in charge now. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think he's in charge of anything. I think he's lucky to keep his head on his shoulders. But that's my personal opinion. But when the North Korean people can say, I can make up my own mind what I want to do, the South Korean people's already come to that. They wanna make it one country, but not at the cost of their freedom, and that'll never happen. That'll never happen. North Korea is the one that's got to change their philosophy, really. Not you people, and you're all the same people. It's kind of funny about that. You know, you're all the same people. In Vietnam, they had two different people. You know, the Tonkinese and the Cochinese. But in Korea, there's one people.
Yeah, that repeats everywhere. It's
Yeah.
even in the United States.
Yeah,
We had a civil war here, and
Mhm.
North and South fought against each other, right? So, I mean, as a final comment, anything that you want to say to young generation or your junior here that's sitting beside you, out of your service, honorable service during the Korean War?
I think the American soldier does himself a great honor when he serves in Korea, because it's a very historic place. It's a very, it's the hermit nation. The land of the morning come. Chosun, the land of the morning come, and I think the American soldier it's a great honor to serve there. I've served there a lot, and I think it's a great honor to serve there. The Korean people are making a bad situation, trying to work it out. They need help from the other side. Until they say, well, we're going to forget about all this silly stuff and be a nation, then it'll never happen. But I think if I was to say to the Korean people one thing, don't give up hope, but it is going to happen. That these two people, who are one people, have to live apart because of a few people there that want it their way. But it's going to happen. I'd say to the young people of Korea, just keep your hope up and work toward it, because it's going to happen. And when the North Korean people realize that South Korea has their best interests at heart, then it's going to change.
Yes.
Until the North Korean people themselves are able to make up their own mind, it's not going to happen. But it is going to happen sometime in the near history. In this, probably in the next 10 to 20 years, that place is going to disappear as a communist nation. We're professional soldiers of a different era.
Right, but could you introduce yourself? Your last name, how do you pronounce it?
I'm Master Sergeant Nicholas Saki. The P
Saki.
is silent, so it's like the drink, but it sounds a little different. Spelled different. I served in Korea in the 2nd Infantry Division in Camp Hovi in Tokori, right next to Camp Casey by Tongdashan. And it was extremely interesting for me. I grew up in a military family. My father was in the Army. He was an infantryman. My grandfather was a paratrooper in World War II and in Korea, and then became an aviator and fought in the Dominican Republic and in Vietnam.
Please tell me about your father and Ronald Russell's relationship.
Well, they were both paratroopers in the 82nd Airborne Division, and they were both in the 187th Regimental Combat Team, but as far as we can tell, they'd never met each other. My grandfather passed away 2 years ago. So this shows that we have a saying that it's a very small army. Despite the fact that there are, have been at times millions of us, we all know somebody who knows the guy we're talking about. We all go to the same places, we all are in the same units, we train at the same bases. So the chances are we've served with somebody who knows the other guy. It's a family. And in a lot of ways, as I've gotten older, I've been in the Army for 18 years, I look at veterans from the Vietnam War and the Korean War and World War II, and really start to think of them as, they're not my direct blood grandparents, but I'm definitely their son. And everything that we have become as the United States Army is very much a product of everything that they learned and taught us. It's very humbling.